My good friend, a woodworker and a fine man from Chicago, is turning 40, so I'm building him the ultimate, ridiculous Jeppsons Malort box build. Not sponsored. If you're not from Chicago and have no idea what Malort is, consider yourself lucky. Unless you're from Chicago, and then they'll probably take offense to that because they love their Malort. And if there's one thing we know about love, it's that it's not always kind. And if you've had the unfortunate situation of trying Malort, you might think that it's made of gasoline and grass clippings, which will matter later in the video, but it's actually not made out of gasoline. It's made out of wormwood, which is a bitter herb known for its ability to kill stomach worms and other parasites. So then again, maybe Malort's pretty good if you have a stomach worm or parasites and you just need to get them out of your system and you don't like doctors and instead you just woodwork all day. In fact, coming from the Thrillist article that I got most of this information from by a wonderful writer named Meredith Heil, Jeppsons Malort was not just killing worms, it actually outsmarted prohibition. It was labeled a medicinal alcohol, and thanks to some loophole, it was the only legal wormwood product sold in America for a full 96 years. Well done, Malort. If you're more curious about the woodworking than the wormwood, I'll explain what I'm doing right here in case you're new to woodworking. This is the classic blue tape box strategy. If you cut your box sides all to 45 degrees, you can use blue tape and glue to wrap up the different sides of the box into a perfect square. It's really quite nice. Almost as nice as Malort was during the pandemic, when the fine folks over at CH Distillery decided to, take a break and help out the people. And they cranked out Malort branded hand sanitizer and donated it to area hospitals, kids, blood donation centers. I'm starting to like Malort more and more the more I talk about it. But you yourself can pick up your very own Malort hand sanitizer and get two-fisted clean. Again, not sponsored. Once you have your box built, you gotta build a little cap for the end. You can spread that glue down the sides and then cap it right at the edge and have yourself a fine looking box that only needs to have a lid cut out of it. And at this point I was feeling pretty good with myself and decided this wood filler would help the red oak stand out and look just like $1,000,000, just like any good build should. So I filled up those edges and then marked out my spots for the lid, which I would hand cut and use the table saw to perform a fairly dangerous cut that I don't recommend unless you're very confident with your table saw. It's called a plunge cut, and it involves placing your piece over a spinning blade and running it to another point that you've already determined on the box. It'll allow you to have a nice cut lid, but it's really dangerous because you're setting that piece right on a spinning blade, in case I need to explain that. But if you do it right and you have all your fingers, you can open up your future lid and still feel good about yourself. So good that you'll decide to sand before you take the ultimate plunge, which is to light the whole thing on fire, which is what I did next, and what ruined all of my efforts making these mitered edges. As it turns out, me being new to burning wood, the glue used at those mitered edges might come loose under the heat of your propane torch. Word to the wise, it did for mine, resulting in really nice 1 to 2 centimeter gaps at every mitered edge. After feeling like a morning after consuming too much Malort, you can lick your wounds and figure out how you're going to adjust, realizing that you've just ruined something you spent a lot of time trying to make look perfect. And even though I hadn't figured out how to quite fix those broken miters, I decided I need to move on anyway. And even though sometimes moving on means giving up, it didn't here. I was determined to make the inside of this box look like the glory that is selecting Malort at your local establishment, and spray painting it in a metallic gold that would shine across the room when my buddy opens this up to celebrate his 40 years around the sun. The first coat went on easily, and the second coat solidified the bright beauty of the gold that would stand out among his other liquor choices and say, "Have me. I'm yours. I'm from Chicago. I am Malort." So, if you can guess from the look on my face, I'm now trying to figure out exactly what to do with these broken miters. Like any good solution, instead of dealing with it, I decided to scrape away some of that burnt ash and then take my measurements for what would become the legs and a subtle detail to break up the total blackness of this box. Using some red oak strips that I'd cut down to 3/4 of an inch wide and about 3/8 of an inch thick, I went over to the table saw, removed my normal blade, and added in my dado stack. The convenient thing about a dado stack is you can set up your blades at the same height as your workpiece as long as it can fit next to it, and you can get a really close, if not perfect fit before you add that stack onto the table saw. This is recommended, of course, so you don't have to keep changing your blades out, since it's a little bit of an effort to put on a dado stack. Be careful, of course, dado stacks are dangerous and outlawed in Europe. But this is America, this is Malort, and I'm building a box for a buddy who's turning 40 from Chicago. Once that dado stack was ripping hard, I cross-cut it to put some grooves down the side that I could then place those pre-cut pieces into to construct the legs and the side detail. Now you might notice that suddenly those edges are repaired, and that's because of an old friend called epoxy, which I slathered along the edges, and it disappeared those gaps like nothing ever happened. So don't tell him. Hopefully he doesn't see this. I added a couple simple hinges so that the lid would open nicely, sanded that down, and then took to fixing the fact that it no longer was charred darkness as I wanted. With a few coats of spray paint, I could then install the LED lights, which would go conveniently in the ends as if I'd planned this. They're motion detecting, which works 62% of the time, but the hope was that I could place those in there, open the lid, and it would illuminate the glory of Malort. while I was feeling pretty good about how the old girl was working, it felt like something was missing. And like a fine scotch might have wood shavings on the bottom of its box to hold it warm for years to come, I knew this Malort needed something even better. So I went out and mowed my lawn on a uniquely sunny day in Portland and grabbed the finest handful of lawn clippings and tossed them on a table so that those could don the bottom of the box in honor of the fact that Malort gasoline and grass shaving flavored beauty could be truly honored like the wonderful bottle it is, like the wonderful friend I have who's turning 40, who's from Chicago, and who introduced me to this thing that seems more like poison. Thanks for watching.